On a remote island, a woman emerges from a barrel painted black with nothing but her clothes on. She curses a man named Saman, who sails away, reassuring his associates that she will be unable to use magic. She proclaims to be the best mage in their clan, that nothing will stop her except maybe hunger. Revenge isn't easy on an empty stomach. Yoshino Takigawa is confronted at Fuwa Mihiro's family grave. This is the second time today he's been questioned about Mihiro's whereabouts, first by his teacher, and now by some strange woman calling herself Evangeline Yamamoto. He barely considers him a friend anyway. Before he can brush her off, she pulls a gun on him, claiming that a young man was seen saving a girl in a quarantine zone going by the name Fuwa Mihiro. Yoshino admits that her story seems a bit out of character for him, that is, unless she resembles his younger sister, Aika, whom Yoshino is paying his respects to. A butterfly distracts Yoshino, despite having a gun to his head, make that hundreds if not thousands of them in the middle of winter no less. Before the woman can react, Yoshino makes his move, disarming her just as Mihiro appears, glowing with a blue aura, and delivers a literal flying kick to Yamamoto's head. Somehow able to stop the bullets in mid-air, he quickly makes her work and the two escape, made for the city, with the appearance of butterflies. The entire population was infected with black iron syndrome, as the government called it. People around begin to turn into solid metal. Yoshino was close enough to Mihiro to avoid a similar fate. Why? Because magic, of course. There is a clan of sorcerers who want to awaken an ancient god, and this syndrome is just a symptom of the ritual they are performing. Where did he learn magic? Carved out of wood that speaks. More specifically, Kyuzuribe Hikaz, the family's heir to the most powerful magician known to mankind, now begins to speak through a puppet in order to communicate from the remote island he is stranded on, to die despite how crazy it sounds. Yoshino believes every word of it. Mihiro and the sorcerer make a deal. Hell will help stop the clan, and in return he promises to find his sister's killer. He says he even saves the world in the process, which is totally out of character for Mihiro. A giant orb rises from beneath the ocean and opens its single eye, which is pretty convincing. If nothing else, apparently these orbs have been popping up all over the country and are the fruit of some godlike tree. Hikaz explains that there is a mage clan, the Kyuzuribe, who had a power struggle, which is why Saman marooned her on an island where she is unable to use magic. Besides the doll, they go to the spot where Aika died so that Hikaz can help track the killer using the talismans she left scattered around the country. They allow anyone who touches them to use the limited magical power stored within. Mihiro takes a silver dagger and stabs the floor where Aika's body was found. The murder took place a year ago, so it will take some time to pick up the killer's trail. He gives Yoshino a few talismans, warning him to be wary if any butterflies appear. They part ways since there's no point in Yoshino sticking around. Besides, Aika didn't like him anyway, and he has a girlfriend to worry about. But little does Mihiro know, the two are one and the same. She liked Yoshino more than she let on. Yamamoto regains consciousness and follows Yoshino. He touches one of the talismans and sends them both flying into a storefront across the street. Picking up the handgun she dropped, he tries to escape but becomes trapped in his school. A mage wielding a spear appears while Mihiro and Hikaz argue, despite her warning not to fight him head-on. That's exactly what he does, in order to smoke Yoshino. Yamamoto drives her to the roof, where he warns her without hesitation. He was surprised at how calmly he held the gun. She tries to run at him, but he instead hits her and teleports them over the edge. Scared, she barely breaks their fall with magic. Yoshino can't give up on Mihiro and decides to make a deal with Yamamoto. As they talk, he realizes that his girlfriend, Fuwa, was Aika. Neither he nor Mihiro accept the absurd circumstances of her death, but perhaps he can find the reason for it in a world where the time isn't right. When Yoshino comes to his rescue, Mihiro becomes suspicious of Natsumura, one of Saman's assistants. Not so hot, the princess tells them to back off immediately, but Mihiro gets tired of her yelling, so Yoshino throws the doll so she can explain how magic works to him and confronts the spear-wielding mage. He's an aggressive spell. Kyuzuribe can only use defensive magic, which is designed to maintain the logic of the world, repair it, heal it, and control it. Instead, he uses a force field at the tip of his weapon, similar to hitting someone with a shield. The magic comes from the Tree of Genesis, requiring both the invocation of a clan member and an offering. Anything that is a product of civilization, the more complex the offering, the more powerful the magic. Mahiro figures out pretty quickly that he can cause damage without a weapon by using the same technique on his own body. It still doesn't stop him from getting thrown around or protect him completely from injury, though. He's reminded of his sister and refuses to give up, taking a gun from a metallized cop while accidentally leaving his phone on the bus. The government sends in helicopters to destroy the tunnels and bridges in an effort to quarantine the city. In one of the tunnels, Mahiro and Natsumura have a standoff. He fires the gun at a gas tank, confident the explosion will do the trick. It's a good thing Yoshino shows up after finding Mahiro's bloody phone on the bus. Using healing magic to track him, the two book it out of the tunnel just as the choppers take aim and collapse the bridge. Hikaze is pretty impressed with Yoshino's quick thinking. She narrows the identity of the killer down. It's a member of the Kyuzuribe clan. The duo takes a bus out to the countryside to search for more talismans and wait for more fruit to appear, so they can triangulate their trajectory. When butterflies suddenly appear, Yoshino attempts to save the few people in the area but doesn't reach a pair of kids in time. Hikaze asks Yoshino about their relationship while Mahiro takes a bath. They've known each other since middle school, though they weren't technically friends. Mahiro was a rich kid, which isolated him from the others. After getting run over by a motorcycle in an apparent accident, Yoshino is forced to visit him in the hospital with their teacher. Due to his status, Mahiro suspects it was a hit job and asks Yoshino for help. Since the adults won't believe him, it turns out he was right. Yoshino investigates and finds a connection between the cyclist and the chauffeur. They plotted revenge after Mahiro's father sacked the chauffeur, but Yoshino never wanted anything to do with him. After that, the two were always paired up. While Mahiro is alone, Hikaze poses the same question, to which he responds, "There was some stupid stuff that happened," and then the stupid punchline was Yoshino announcing to the class the real reason he was run over. He was selflessly saving a puppy, which is when people stopped fearing him for his status and began to warm up to him. Mahiro reiterates that Yoshino is the villain, but admits that he couldn't have made it this far without her. Seiman knows the two of them are arriving and has triangulated the location of the Exodus tree from the trajectory of the fruit. Another member of the clan, Tetsuma, worried about the interference of the princess, Hikaze, went to the next set of talismans, as they were watching his movements just in case. The queen's confidence comes from the protection given to her by the tree of Genesis, which supports the logic and order of the world, but Yoshino felt something. Seiman and the rest of the tribe also use her power, so why resurrect the Exodus tree and trap the princess on the island? Yoshino reminisced about his days at the same aquarium as Aika, who always quoted Hamlet and believed that everything happens for a reason. Although this aquarium was abandoned and the fish turned into iron, they find the amulets just as Tetsuma waltzes through the door. When Hikaze questions why the clan would rebel against the goal of reviving the Tree of Genesis, Tetsuma says that by imposing his will on others, he will be ignored. It's better if she dies on that island. One of the talismans they retrieve is the exact same necklace that Aika gave Yoshino, making him question the veracity of fate. Maybe she was right, but why, then, was she brutally murdered? Mahiro devises a plan to flood the place and threaten to electrocute Tetsuma and his henchmen, allowing the duo to escape without facing a real mage head-on. Hikaze sends them to meet Junikura, who is holding onto a special talisman that will turn the tide in their favor. Only one obstacle stands in their way: the secret password. Boobs that don't shake aren't boobs at all. They're in, but they find it strange how Junikura talks about the princess in the past tense, until he claims that she's been dead this whole time. He verified the body himself, even though all that remains is her skeleton. He doesn't want to know their plans since he's neutral in the clan's dispute and isn't actually a true member of the clan and can't use magic. The two of them ruminate on this new development while riding the bus. Out of nowhere, the ground starts shaking and there's a sudden influx of butterflies. People begin turning to iron as another one of the Tree of Exodus. Giant orb-like fruit emerges from beneath the earth. Mahiro tells the bus driver to floor it. Hell, be safe as long as he's near them. The princess gives them permission to move in on Salmon's location. Meanwhile, Natsumura meets with Junikura and asks him to join their side and give up on remaining neutral. Junikura levels him with ease and warns him that Seiman wouldn't appreciate his actions. Junichiro wonders whether Mahiro and Yoshino are aware that the Tree of Genesis has a higher likelihood of ending the world. Yoshino is taken off guard that night when Mahiro asks if he knew Aika had a boyfriend, hoping he hadn't been found out despite all the evidence right under Mahiro's nose. He replies that he couldn't picture it, wondering if his face gave anything away. They know that the special talisman to open the briefcase is a weapon on a chain, which seems strange. Considering that the rest are more or less trivial, the princess says that the tree absorbs the weapons anyway, so she keeps order by destroying them. Mahiro can't see through Yoshino's hidden mask or even recognize his own emotions, but he can make excellent observations. Surrounded by armed soldiers, the two engage, but Mahiro is knocked out and Yoshino is taken away, although it wasn't against his will. He made a deal to get insurance and a pistol if he ended up going south. The government agency's forces plan to launch a full assault on the Tree of Exodus. Mahiro saves Yoshino from his captors but seems not to suspect him in any way. The two decide to rest in an abandoned bus for the night, and Yoshino wonders what will happen after Mahiro will do after getting his revenge. While Mahiro wonders why Yoshino always stares at his phone, Yoshino dreams about the time he, Aika, and Mahiro spent at their summer home, trying to keep their relationship from Mahiro, but suddenly wakes up to the special talisman's barrel pointed right at his head. Mahiro laughs and tells him to get ready to head out. Seimon notices the forces approaching. There's practically an army marching on the location of the Tree of Exodus. It's too soon. He wasn't expecting they'd find him and launch an assault that fast. He orders the mages to focus their energy on maintaining the shield instead of concealing their position when he's informed that the barrier has been breached by the duo aiding Hikaz. Seimon intercepts them. Standing beside a barrel, he tries to explain that all the destruction thus far was due to the Tree of Genesis trying to halt the Tree of Exodus reawakening. Since it feeds on the innovation and fruits of a civilization, it has the potential to consume everything. The breakdown of logic and order will cause the Tree of Genesis to hit the reset button on the entire civilized world. Seimon poses the question of whether Mahiro is willing to destroy the world, but he already knew about the possibility of the collapse of civilization and doesn't care either way. He just wants the princess back so she can find the killer and avenge Aika. But Seimon retorts with the possibility that she's already dead, opening the barrel and revealing the skeleton Junichiro confirmed as Hikaze's. To prove his point, he asks the princess what year it is, but her response shocks Yoshino and Mahiro. She's 2 years off, and by her own count, has only been on the island for 4 months. It seems like time really is out of joint. To avoid enacting the Tree of Genesis wrath by killing her himself, Seimon left her to the elements and waited for nature to do it for him. Yoshino is about to give up and hand over the talismans when Mahiro makes a new deal. If Seimon can find his sister's killer, then he won't pull the trigger. He agrees, but when learning that it's someone within the clan, he doesn't believe that anyone would willingly give up their magic by using it for destruction. Yoshino picks up the doll to speak with the princess. When she mentions Hamlet, he has another flashback to a time when Aika was alive. Revenge, a mage, an island, a tragedy that doesn't end in tragedy. The Tempest. Natsumura meets Yamamoto on the battlefield, but she has the talismans that Yoshino gave her and she won't make it easy for him, even if it's the last thing she does. Seimon is baffled when Yoshino tells Mahiro he will reveal the identity of Aika's boyfriend if he changes his mind and helps the princess, or at least hears him out until Seimon can find the killer. Not even the princess can believe her ears. The fate of the whole world hangs in the balance, and will remembering a boy change everything forever? Yoshino, they must have been in favor of the Tree of Genesis, otherwise everything up until then would have been a coincidence, and that's even funnier than the events themselves. Yamamoto heads over to save the enemy artillery from being blown apart and hopefully buy enough time to stop the tree from regenerating. Yoshino goes on to argue with the help of Mahiro that Saimon's plan was to make the princess lose all hope when she found out about already being dead by the time they got to the tree and being powerless to fulfill her bargain and aid in its destruction. This is exactly what he planned. He would cause every inconvenience that might render the queen powerless, but they could not discover everything. Then how does he plan to get her back? Does not create a time paradox? Seimon overdid it and thought he beat them, but Yoshino has been in a stasis trap for 2 years, even before going to the island, unbeknownst to him, suggesting that he unquestioningly believes it. Despite being wrong, he lets Seimon drop his sword and can't believe that the boy is convincing Mahiro that he doesn't know what's going on right now. So, Yoshino asks for proof of this time prison Seimon swears exists. It doesn't matter though. If the talisman is activated, then he'll have to bring back the princess himself regardless. He comes up with a plan to prove the time shift. The princess can carve something into the barrel, and if it shows up in the future, they'll have no choice but to accept the truth. It doesn't matter though. Yoshino's gambit was to make Seimin panic. Hikaze details how the dolls work. They must be roughly the same size and shape and imbued with some piece of the caster. She soaked them in her own blood. They already have a piece of the princess. In the shape of a human, her skeleton, Seimin is completely hopeless now. They've figured out his fail-safe to bring the princess back. Meanwhile, Janikura stops Natsumura for questionable reasons. Despite his neutrality in the matter, Seimin plays his last hand, admitting that he hid an offering on the island great enough to transport her body onto her skeleton in the future. Despite this, he tries to convince Mihiro that this is all the Tree of Genesis' fault. It must have caused Aika's death and brought Yoshino and him here to save Hikaze. Janikura convinces both Natsumura and Yamamoto that the fight is pointless and that if he doesn't heal her, then he becomes a murderer, which is a serious offense within the clan. The killer would lose their ability to use magic. Forgiveness must be asked of the tree through a ritual in which a high-ranking official determines whether it was performed. The princess corroborates this, but if it were to happen, then they would not be caught in the web of magic after all. Seimin uses this to try and convince Mihiro that it's all too convenient for the princess. Obviously fate favors her, but what if fate favored him? Remembering his sister quoting the Tempest, Mihiro calls out both Yoshino and Seimin for trying to buy time. Seimin was stalling until the investigation results came back. If he brought the killer, then there would be no reason to tempt him to join his side and not Hikaze. The whole time trying to revive the Tree of Exodus before any action was taken. Seimin receives the call telling him that it wasn't a member of the clan who murdered Aika. No one had done anything illogical. Everyone is shocked, while Mihiro begins to lose it. The princess has a revelation. Since she serves the Tree of Genesis, the only other person who could escape the web would be the mage serving the Tree of Exodus. Since trying to revive the Tree of Exodus, the one who serves it must have been unleashed. It's the princess' duty to decide when to revive the Tree of Genesis, which most likely means it's the Tree of Exodus mage who must approve its revival. Mihiro figures that if it was the Exodus mage, then Seimin's logic falls apart and his argument has no weight. He falls to his knees in defeat, unable to accept that the princess now has the upper hand. On the battlefield, Junichi and the others watch as the Tree of Genesis rapidly grows, tendrils protruding out of the earth, surrounding the Tree of Exodus, but he still doesn't believe that Hikaze approved it. Mihir hesitates. What kind of reversal of fortune goes this well? Seimin might be involved, but the Tree of Genesis could have faked the existence of the mage. There's too much uncertainty. But even still, Yoshino prays that Mihiro will at least give the princess a chance. It could take hours to find the talisman, and by that time, the Tree of Exodus could very well be revived. If the Tree of Genesis really could produce miracles, then why hadn't he? Just as Hikaze begins to doubt, an unarmed missile drops from the sky, but if it could do this, it could kill someone just as easily. They prepare the skeleton and items for the transfer as the princess swears to help find Aika's killer for all the help Mihiro and Yoshino offered her despite never really knowing the truth. She promises him that if the Tree of Genesis is the killer, then he can take her life. The Tree of Genesis breaks through the barrier, but the Tree of Exodus retaliates. It looks like it has the edge in this battle. However, the Tree of Genesis seems to be reviving all over the world as trunks begin popping up everywhere. Before Hikaze can even attempt to stop either, a tendril slices Yoshino's torso vertically while another branch pierces Mihiro's chest. While ordering Princess Seimin to revive Mihiro, she doesn't think twice about using a special amulet to revive Yoshino. No one knows what the old godlike trees are and what they are capable of. Even those who exert themselves do not know what they have put into the world.